Hello, welcome to part 3 of learning how to code. So I'm just going to show you what's going on here. You can see that quite a few things have changed, but not too many. Let's just kind of go back to the other code and see, there's quite a few things that are different between what we wrote beforehand and what's showing up now. But I want you to understand that this is not a big difference. The only thing we are doing that is particularly special is that we are adding this stuff right here. All these three, come on, show up. There you go. I don't know why I let me do that. But you can see that this is really all we've really changed. And all the other code is exactly the same. Now the big difference between how these two things work is that this one can make decisions. Basically, it can change what it's doing depending on what we've given it, while this one down here can never make any decisions. It can only accept, changing what the input is, so whatever the person's name is. So we can say dog, we can say cat, we can say idiot. The person named idiot is dumb, but obviously Albert Einstein isn't dumb, or at least compared to all of us, he's probably not dumb. Yeah, I mean, he'll probably call him. Who knows what he would call himself. And so let's just do a quick, just a quickie through back what we've done. So we have console.writeLine, and we're not really sure why we put this in, but we do know that whatever we put in these parentheses will be what we display to the screen. Now, what is output? We're not, obviously we ran this code, we didn't print out output. Instead, we printed out all this stuff, or displayed all this stuff right here, because we know that output is a variable of type string, and we know that variables are nothing more than a space in the computer with a name, and we tell the computer this is the type of information in that space. In this case, that space being a string. The type of information in that space is a string. Think of it kind of like the Dewey Decimal. Think of it like a subject. Math has nothing to do, or at least normal math has nothing to do with chemistry. Chemistry, while it depends on physics, the type, you're not going into that type of information. It's a very different type of information. You're using, you have different things you're going to do with this information. And we will see later how useful it is to have these string names when it comes to C#. Other languages may not have types, and they have different ways of, figuring out how to do this stuff. We'll talk about later. Then we have input, which is the same thing as this thing, except it's going to read from the console, or whatever we type into the computer. It's going to read that in, and it's going to then send it to output, which will then print it out. And then we have write, which is just like writeLine, except unlike writeLine, which basically does something like this. Like you ever type in Microsoft Word, you do this, then you click enter, and then you do that. That's what writeLine does. writeLine just does this part, and then it makes a space, and it actually doesn't make a space. It just does this, and then it lets you continue to keep typing on the same line. Console.writeLine will not let you type on the same line. Console.write will let you type on the same line. So we've gone through all of this. All this is the same as before, except this is different. This is called declaring a variable. Basically, all we're doing is telling the computer, hey, we want you to create a space, or the programmer is saying, I want you to create a space where with the name called output, and you're going to store something called a string, but I'm going to put something in there later. That's called declaring the variable. This right here at the top is called declaring and initializing the variable, because we have created the space, we have said what type is in that space, and we have said, hey, this is what we're putting in here. So we know what's in there. The computer knows something's in there, what type it is, and what's its name. This one, it just knows the type and the space and its name, but we don't know what's in there yet. Now here's where something different happens. This is called a bool. A bool, if you put your mouse on top of it, if you're using Visual Studio, you can also just use Notepad if you're crazy like that. And we can see it says a Boolean is anything that can have the value true or false, and only that. There's nothing else. Either something is true or something is false, and that's all a Boolean does. And now we can go over here, we can see input. And if you remember input, you can see that that's our variable, but it's doing something like console.write. How is it doing this? Well, the reason it's doing this is because of the variable name. The variable name, which is a string, basically gives us access to special abilities that it has. And these abilities are called in C# methods. These methods allows us to do things to the information that we have in an easy fashion, instead of having to write all this code ourselves. Now, in this case, you can kind of read it fairly easily, and you can see it says return a value indicating whether a specified substring occurs within this string. Obviously, or I should not say obviously, because you might not get what substring is. Think of a substring as a subset of a set, like in math. Or I know a better way would just be a bag. Let's say you have a bag that has the numbers 1, 2, and 3. If I say, does this bag contain 2? That is true, because we know the bag has the number 2 in it. But if I say, does this bag have the number 4? It's false, because obviously it has 1, 2, 3. It doesn't contain 4. And so that's all contains does. And if you want to learn more about all the different methods or abilities, methods that C# has, you just type in string C# in any search engine that you have. Bing, for whatever reason, I'm using Bing, Google, Yahoo. You just click system string class from the Microsoft website, and then you click methods, and you can see it has all these different methods. And generally, when you click them, it should give you an example on how to use them. But it shows you what this thing does, and you can just kind of read through them and see, what's closest to what you want to do. You should always try to use methods, because these are usually the most optimal method of accomplishing the goal that's specified, rather than writing it yourself, unless you're doing something special. But let's not go too far into that. We'll go into that later. But just understand that basically input has a method called contains that will look through input, because a string is just a collection of letters, and find a letter, and called that is lowercase c, because uppercase c and lowercase c are different to the from the computer's perspective. Obviously, to you and me, c and lowercase c are one and the same, but to the computer, c and lowercase c are different. And there are ways to get around that issue so it can deal with an uppercase c, but for now, we will not do that. We'll just deal with lowercase c. So if input contains the letter C, then it's true. If it does not have the letter C in it, then it's false. Now, we're going to this part right here, where we can kind of see where output is being initialized twice. And you're thinking like, why is it being initialized twice? It's not. As I've said before, this is a decision. We're telling the computer that, hey, if something is different, do this thing, else do that thing. And the format it does, and the format to make this decision is shown in this if-else statement. Technically, you don't need this else statement, but we are keeping it just to make it a bit easier to see what's going on, to let you know that we have it. But let me just move along. So you can see right here, this is an if is true, basically saying if true, do everything in the brackets, else do everything in the else bracket. Now let me repeat that one more time. If something is true, in this case, if our variable is true, then do everything in the if brackets. You can see these are the brackets directly under if. You can even hold under it. I was showing it before. Yeah, see, this is part of the if brackets. Or if this is true is false, do everything in the else brackets, which you can see, you put your mouse there and it shows us that this is the brackets for the else. So if the input contains letter C, like my name, CodeLeok13, you're smart. If you don't have the letter C in it, you're dumb, and you should feel bad. So once we gone to this part, the computer will then print it out. So let's try it and see what it does. So in this case, we will put in A. And obviously anyone with just an A in their name is dumb, because you should have a C in it. And now I put in a C, and we see that the person with a C in their name is smart. And I mean anything with a C. So if I have all of this, and I put a C in there too early, but oh, that doesn't matter. Oh, that's a V. And then there's one more C. You can obviously, we know, yes, this person can't spell to save their life, but however, they do know what a C is, and thus, obviously, they're intelligent. I hope this has helped you learn how to use conditional statements in this very simple form. We will be going, oh yeah, I forgot this last thing to talk about. And this, let me go back a little bit. So contains, as you can see, contains works for strings, but it wouldn't make sense for a Boolean, because we know a Boolean is true or false. A Boolean can have the value true or false. A string can have any number of letters in it, any combination. So it makes sense to have a contain, but for is true, it's like asking for a contain method for 1 or 2. If you can either have a 1 or a 2 in your pocket, you don't need to check if it has it. You just go into your pocket and look at it, and you'll know it's in there. But anyway, let me get back to the ending. So like, once you're done, I mean, not once you're done. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you got any comments, anything you think needs more details, please leave a comment. If this was actually good and useful, leave a like. And if you want more of this, subscribe to whatever the equivalent is on your platform.